as you start to scale your program, what you're going to find very fast is you're going to realize not every channel performs equally, and not every campaign within an existing channel based on its objective performs equally. And that's okay. Like, it's not a matter of having the best of everything. It's a matter of having a little bit of everything working well enough for you. So collectively, you have all this opportunity, this volume, and the blended efficiency makes sense for you based on your CAC and your lifetime value.
All right. I knew this one would be quite popular. We already have folks streaming into the session. So we're just getting started. So before we get into the actual session, I'll get some of the logistics out of the way. For folks who are joining in, you'll see a couple of polls come up. We really want to make sure that we address the audience with the right set of content. So make sure that you go ahead and answer the two polls. We promise that's the only two. We're not going to bombard you with a lot of questions. And once the polls are up, just general logistics, if you have any questions, be sure to pop those questions in the questions tab. If you just want to chat, introduce yourself, feel free to do so in the chat tab. And if there's a question there, I'll make sure to put it up on stage at the right time. Right? All right. I think we have enough folks joining in, so I'll get this going. I'm Chara. I'm a co-founder at Revenue Hero, and Masters of Revenue is our virtual summit aimed at bringing together revenue strategists, practitioners in different fields, and hearing from them about strategies that are working and thriving. Because these days, when you log into LinkedIn, there's either a strategy that's either already dead or dying. So we want to bring together folks who are still optimistic and help us gain some optimism in running GTM orgs. So performance marketing or paid media strategies, when done well, can have really great results. But it's also one of those things which is very easy to get out of hand and out of control. So on those lines, I have with me Silvio. We couldn't think of anybody better to run this session. Silvio, I'll leave the introductions to you before we get into the slide deck. I would love to hear about you and ad conversion and then get this going.
Absolutely. Good to be here. Honored to be here. Thanks for considering me. A little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Ad Conversion, and we're a digital advertising academy, and we teach B2B marketers how to scale paid ads with free courses taught by some of the best practitioners in the world. And outside of that, we also have an agency. We're running ads for top B2B SaaS brands like ActiveCampaign, Mixpanel, Checker, NetSpy, so product-led, sales-led, all over the gamut, 7-figure budgets, global brands. And then in addition to that, we also have a YouTube channel where I've personally posted over 50 videos on the topic of advertising. So everything around ads is like kind of my jam. And then before starting Ad Conversion, I was the head of performance marketing and product innovation at a company called Metadata. And I was helping automate advertising and being a part of that process, and then overseeing the performance marketing team that was responsible for managing ads across all kinds of different SaaS companies under their portfolio.
All right. Awesome. Sounds like we're in for a masterclass. So Silvio, while you get into the slides and set things up, folks who've joined in, you've taken an hour of your time, from doing whatever you're doing to join the session today. So what I love to hear is why you joined today, right? Like, what about performance marketing is important to you? What do you want to take away from the session? And which topics do you want us to cover? So if you could just pop that into chat, I'll make sure that we go through that in the conversation as and while the right slides are being presented. And if you have any questions, just pop them into the questions tab and we'll put them up live on stage. All right. So without further ado, Silvio, I'll hand this over to you. Take us through the masterclass.
All right, let's do it. You guys are in for a treat. We have a lot to cover. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about depending on who you are listening to this, but for me personally, boring topic, which is all around operations, which is the glue, the difference between success and just going insane in the process of actually being able to execute your paid media strategy with clarity and this operational excellence. This big word that just simply means how do we do this in a way where we don't go insane in the process. And this is a facet of advertising that isn't often talked about. I know I'm guilty of this, and a lot of my friends are guilty of this in terms of the ad world, but we're always looking for like the latest strategy, the latest tactic, the latest platform updates and changes. Like for example, third-party cookies are no longer being deprecated by Google Chrome. Like everyone's aware of that and like learning and studying that. But like, when's the last time you actually looked at your paid media infrastructure and simple basic operations like, do I have a change log where I document changes that I'm doing in my ad account on a regular basis? Like, probably not very often. So my goal with this presentation is that you'll walk away with it with very clear understanding on what it looks like at a high level to create operational excellence in the most practical way from my experience. I already introduced myself earlier, but just as a quick recap I'm a big believer in like credibility and like why listen to somebody in a world of opportunities. Everything I'm teaching you today is from my experience working in the past with different companies, my time at Metadata, before that consulting and freelancing, but also right now in the agency where we're actively running seven-figure budgets for brands like ActiveCampaign, Mixpanel, Checker, and many others. And all of the experience that we've had, not just advertising on a single channel, like we're not a LinkedIn agency or a Google agency. We run ads everywhere: Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Quora. And we do it in a way where we don't go crazy in the process and that it all connects. And we build this cohesive pay media program that allows us to create this infrastructure to provide pipeline and revenue for years to come. And that's really the goal of when you approach paid ads, is you're creating a new channel for your business that can become this faucet to bring new opportunities and growth over the long run. So if you guys are interested, let's go ahead and dive into the content, starting with the 3 levels of executional clarity. And Chada, as I go through this presentation, if there's questions that come up, feel free to just interrupt me. But the 3 levels of executional clarity that we are going to be focusing on is strategy, optics, and tactics. And we're going to start in that order of operation. So we're going to first dive into strategy, then optics, and then tactics. So if that sounds good to all of you, let's get started with strategy, the first level. So strategy is nothing more than a plan, simply put. And the first step to developing said plan is you need to get very crystal clear on a quantifiable goal and your current baseline. This is like, and a lot of what I think I'm going to say today might sound obvious, but it's the things that are obvious and easy to do that are also easy not to do. And they're usually the things that make the difference. So when it comes to where you first get started and you're putting together your strategy, you need to get clear on what is that quantifiable goal that you are trying to achieve. We're not just running ads for the sake of running ads. I love ads personally, and like sometimes I find myself doing that because I just want to see how certain things perform. But most business owners, founders, we have a goal, right? We want to drive meetings booked. We want to drive free trial signups. What is it for you? And adding on to that, where are you starting from right now? So even if you've never ran a single ad before, you already have some level of baseline. Assuming your product is already out in the market, and if you're starting before your product is even created, can you get a baseline based on some sort of other offer? So instead of it being a free trial sign up, maybe you build a newsletter to build early interest for your product. Are you getting signups to your newsletter already? Use that as a baseline, and you want to try to get more signups. There's always something you can operate from. The analogy I always give people is like, imagine you were trying to lose weight in a fitness example. What's your starting weight and what's your goal weight? Because if not, then how are you going to know if you're actually getting there? Easy to do, very easy not to do. So where are we starting from? Once you have that clear quantifiable goal, it needs to be a specific number. It's better to have something than have nothing. Then you're ready for the next step, which is to get clear on your audience and offer and the available chess moves. So this is where you need to start to think like an actual strategist. And me personally, and on the agency, and even my time at Metadata, and just even before that, I've never pigeonholed myself to any one individual channel, because depending on the audience and the offer that we're promoting, certain channels have strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, if your goal is to drive awareness and your business is trying to only market to enterprise organizations, that those factors alone already remove a lot of available options in terms of the chessboard at your disposal. So you need to get clear on your audience and offer, and then think about where does your audience hang out online and which channels, depending on that combination and your quantifiable goal, do you believe is worth an investment? So this is where the more familiar you are with each channel, the easier this will be. And this is where expertise is really helpful. But really take a step and think about what are those available options.
Yeah.
Once
So,
you get clear. Mhm.
so
Yep, go
on
for
this,
it.
right? Given that you said you have to try to optimize channel for goals, do you have a recommendation, or have you seen patterns work out for B2B, SaaS, LinkedIn and Google is better versus B2C or D2C products, Facebook, TikTok, or do you just have to experiment and then find out? So just for context, I'm also a
There,
co-founder new to marketing, so I have just equally basic questions as everybody in the audience. So I'll keep throwing them in from time to time.
yeah, it's a good question. So there's definitely patterns among industry.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, for SaaS, it's Google, it's LinkedIn, and it's Meta. Those are the big three. And then all the other channels are kind of like these ancillary channels that can work really well. But typically you get started on Google, LinkedIn, and Meta as like the typical arc. Um, as far as which one works better than another, it really goes down to what your goal is and like the primary objective you're trying to drive. So for example, and then also to what you're offering and the market you're offering it in. So for example, like if you are a brand new startup, and like I use the example of like ChatGPT, like if you were a generative AI startup before ChatGPT existed and that category wasn't an existing category that people knew about, and you tried to do Google ads, you probably aren't going to find a lot of success. There's not going to be enough search volume to justify the return on effort at building out a full funnel strategy in your paid search infrastructure. But once ChatGPT created the category, now there's actual search volume for those terms. So there's a real opportunity for you to actually get a quantifiable return on your effort. So it's kind of like this, it's who are you selling to, what are you selling, and what are the conditions in which you're selling, and the level of awareness of the audience that then allows you to kind of understand what's the right chess move for you. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Also, Blair says hi.
Huh?
Also, Blair says hi on chat.
Oh, all right, cool. All right, let's move
Awesome.
on. So map out your funnel and conversion points. So this is so important. There is there's a misnomer in the ad world where we think just because things are hard to track that you shouldn't track anything, and I completely disagree with that. There are certain things that are harder to track, but that doesn't mean I'm going to just be blind and spend money and pray for the best. I love ads, but I'm not that optimistic. You know, at the end of the day, the best advertisers think like investors first, and they execute like scientists. You should always be operating from the frame of an investor. And to get the best of the both worlds is where the concept of funnels are really helpful. So whatever it is your objective, let's just go through a hypothetical example, right? Let's say for me, I'll use ad conversion as an example. My goal is to drive onboarded trial signups. To me, that is a quality signal that I want to optimize for. So an onboarded trial signup, or an onboarded signup in this case, is somebody that signed up to ad conversion to get access to our courses, but then they also went through our onboarding process in our platform. Great. I want to get 100 onboarding signups every month, as an example. Now, what I want to do is I want to map out my funnel to get somebody to an onboarded sign up. So in the case of an ad, what it typically would look like is somebody clicks on your ad, they go to your landing page, and then they convert or they don't convert. If this isn't your funnel, maybe you have a different funnel. Maybe for you, you're doing the ungated content demand creation playbook that you see touted on LinkedIn, where you're just promoting a lot of content in feed and you're measuring based on engagement rate, completion rate, and then the hypothesis and the hope is that we educate the market, so then they will come organically or directly, and then they will manifest into a demo being booked and opportunities being created. Even if that is the truth, you can still map that funnel out. So then in that case, what it would look like ad with content. The next step is completion. Then the next step is blended opt-in, whether it's a demo or whatever your thing is, which now you would just have to measure it from a different source. That would be organic or direct coming through, but you can tie it back to your activity within the same cohorted time frame. I'm going to show you how this all connects later if I'm losing you guys. But the point is you want to get very clear on your funnel and your conversion points, both the leading and the lagging indicators. So that way, when you launch your ad, you're able to get feedback really quickly. I'll use one more example because this usually paints the picture when I explain it to clients. Imagine we were trying to get people to consume our blog and we're running awareness campaigns. And I'm purposely using awareness campaign examples because this is the examples that people kind of give up on and they're like, can't really measure it. It is what it is. And I don't really know if it's working. If the goal is to get somebody to read the blog, because the assumption is if they read the blog, you're going to create brand affinity and trust, which will then materialize into actual pipeline creation and demos being booked, you can still measure that. In this case, what the funnel might look like is impression, ad click, they land on your blog, then you can set up another micro conversion of an engaged visit, somebody that stays on your blog for at least 60 seconds and scrolls 75% of the way through. That is a micro conversion that you can now use as a leading indicator to optimize for quality. And then the next step in your funnel would be a blended booked demo as an example. And you can map that funnel out. So now you're able to get feedback quickly. And when your CMO or your founder or whoever asks you, how is this ad performing? Your response isn't, okay, get back to me in 3 months and we should hopefully see something. If you think in the way of setting up your funnel earlier, this gives you the framework now to understand what's the bottleneck, where's the drop off. So then you know how to optimize and improve, and you can get those signals faster. So you don't have to wait 90 days, 6 months, running an ungated create playbook, hoping it's going to work, and then it actually doesn't work. So this is really important, and I hope you can hear the pain in my voice because I can't tell you how many clients that we've took on that they don't do this, and then they're like, I've been running this thing for 6 months, and they talk about it on LinkedIn, and it doesn't work. And if they thought in this way, they would have realized in week 2 that their content wasn't good enough and they would have already made the necessary changes. So really important in terms of mapping out your funnel and conversion points. And sometimes you've got to get creative on what this looks like for you. I'm using like standard examples here, but that engaged visit is an example of like a creative micro conversion. Another example of a micro conversion you can set up is a form abandon. Somebody that goes to your demo form, starts filling it out, but they don't complete it. You can set up a conversion action off that. And it's the combination of both online conversion tracking and offline conversion tracking to create this ideal conversion funnel. I will move on to the next step unless there was any questions on that, Chara, because I know there was a lot.
No, I'm just surprised that hope as a strategy doesn't work for awareness campaigns. So micro conversion goals for whatever campaigns you're running, like you said, seems so simple, but it's very easy to miss out as a founder, as somebody who's running the marketing team, right? Because I don't think a lot of people think in terms of time spent on page or just scroll depth as a conversion target, because conversion targets immediately go to leads or book demos, right? And I think Ravish has a question about any tools that you can use to help set up those micro conversion goals.
Google Tag Manager. You can set all this up with just standard Google Tag Manager. Just go to what sometimes I like to do when I want to get creative is I don't even go into a tool first. For me personally, I'm a little old school in this way, but I like pen and paper. And I just like to go through the journey. So I'll just go through the actual process that my prospect would. And I go through the journey and I pause. So for example, first it's the ad. And I'm like, okay, what are the ways they can interact with this ad? So I'll map it out. I'll be like, okay, ways they can interact with this ad. Number 1, they can click the ad. Number 2, they could just engage with the ad. Number 3, if depending on the ad format, maybe they can watch the ad. I'll just map that out and I'll be like, great, is there a supporting metric or type of audience available that I can capitalize off of that? If you're running ads on LinkedIn, congratulations. You can create remarketing audiences on video views. You can create remarketing audiences off of single image ads. So I'll just map out the process. So I'm like, okay, first I'm on the ad, then I'm getting directed to this page. What are all the potentialities that I could do on this page? Now, anything in excess in life is usually bad. So you can go a little bit too crazy. And now you start tracking the engaged visit, you start tracking the button click, you start tracking like all these different things. And in the beginning, you kind of have to find the right signal, which takes time. Like the correlation isn't causation, the whole analogy. Like it takes time to find a good signal. In the product world, when I used to be on the product side, there's this notion of a proxy metric. So like product teams, when they're experimenting and they're improving their products, if they want to influence a lagging indicator, they usually establish proxy metrics that they can control and influence that will then lead and actually impact the lagging indicator. So you're gonna have to kind of figure out what that is for you, and it's gonna go through trial and error. But as far as implementing the process, you can do all of it in Tag Manager.
All right, awesome. So we've mapped out the funnel. What next?
All right, next up is decide on your primary stage of focus. So when people think about ads, they typically just think conversion. Like in the example I'm using right now with ad conversion, I want to drive signups to the academy, and my goal is to get as many qualified signups as I can, and that's kind of the end of it. But it would be a miss to. It's okay if strategically I have decided that's my focus, but it's very important if you're listening to this call and you work in a SaaS organization, in a B2B organization, you understand that there's many opportunities for you in terms of where you can deploy your ad budget. There's actually five. There's 5 stages, and this is based on the 5 stages model that I talk about in my Building a Paid Media Program course. But essentially, the first stage is create. This is all around building brand affinity and trust. The second stage is capture. This is where you want to convert interest from in-market buyers. The third stage kind of alternates depending on your sales motion, but it can be accelerate or activate. Accelerate is trying to move deals faster, and activate is trying to convert free users. Revive is the following stage, which is all around restarting closed lost opportunities. And then expand is the final stage, which is all around driving revenue from existing customers. You could theoretically build campaigns for every stage of focus where they have different audiences, different messaging, different ads to try to drive an impact within that stage of focus. Now, I will put a quick disclaimer here because on the agency, like we build this for clients. And when we explain this to them, their first notion is like, I want to do it all, right? Like, I want to do create, I want to do capture, I want to do accelerate, I want to revive, I want to expand. How soon can we get it all done, right? Can we do it in the next 2 weeks? This is very much a crawl, walk, run situation. I highly recommend if you're just getting started, just focus on capture first, convert all of the interest that you possibly can from in-market buyers, and then choose your next stage, depending on where you're at in your business. How long you can stay in capture depends on your total addressable market and the offer that you're promoting. If you are operating in a very niche market, like I'll give you a real example. I used to help one company or SaaS company, and they sell to pharmaceutical researchers. I mean, talk about like as niche as it can get. Enterprise pharmaceutical researchers, like, they were operating off of like a universe of 100 accounts, and that was it. And these were like massive brands. So for them to do a lot on capture is going to be really hard. Like they could potentially cap out after spending $2,000 a month on Google ads, and that's it. That's all the capture they have available to them, right? So they're forced, given their conditions and their constraints of their business, to move towards things like create and accelerate. So this is where it really depends on your business. But in the world we live in today, in terms of SaaS, like everyone talks about like how you have to create, and they kind of give capture a bad rap. There's nothing wrong with focusing on capture first. Like you need to, it's kind of like it's balancing the needs of today versus tomorrow, right? Like if I don't get pipeline today, I will never be able to last in business for tomorrow. So by starting in capture first, it allows you to keep the lights on for today so you can build something great for tomorrow, which is the stuff in create. So, and also don't forget, just because I'm promoting an ad in feed and it's focusing on a direct response, it doesn't mean I'm not creating brand awareness. I think that's also a fallacy that we have that we need to reshift. You're still seeing my brand, and you can do capture in a cool, fun, positive way, brand positive way where it's not annoying as well. So don't feel bad if you're focusing on capture because you hear LinkedIn Guru saying all of your budget should be on create. It's very much a crawl, walk, run situation. It's very circumstantial based on your constraints. So with that being said, decide on what that is for you. Depending on the quantifiable goal that you chose in the previous step, this should be more or less clear, but you're going to want to choose one stage to get started with and then build from there.
Got it. Would the one stage to get started with apply only if you're in an early stage startup, or let's say your Series C, Series B startup, you already have pipeline coming in? Would it then be like a hybrid choice, or is the suggestion that if you're starting with performance marketing, always start with one and then expand into the rest?
It's a good question. So there are no hard rules. Like technically, you could try to do all of it at once if you have the resources and the expertise to be able to do it all at once. Most brands don't, so it's typically bad advice because they'll just fall on their face. So it's the safest bet to start with one. But what I generally recommend to folks running ads is ideally 10 to 20% of your budget should be R&D, research and development. And you can put that 10 to 20% on whatever you want. So whether that's trying out a new stage earlier, whether it's trying a crazy tactic that you've been thinking about for a long time, whether it's finally launching that campaign on Reddit that you've been saying you're going to do, but you never seem to be able to. Ideally, 10 to 20% of your monthly budget, you just put towards crazy ideas, just like big brands invest in R&D and they don't expect immediate return, but they have the understanding and awareness that if this thing does work, it will substantiate all of the investment. And that's what I usually recommend for folks.
All right, makes sense. So that's the strategy bit. What comes next?
All right, next up is optics. So now you have we could have a whole masterclass just on strategy. But now that you've decided your stage of focus, then from there you have to get clear on your audience, your messaging, your positioning, your offer. That's from an executional perspective. You're clear on strategy. Now you move on to optics, which is all around visibility. And in my experience working with SaaS companies, they're usually pretty solid on the strategy piece. I mean, there are some gaps, but this is where I highly recommend you lean closer, because in my experience, this is where most people need help. And we alluded to this earlier with the funnel step, but you're going to want to set your leading and lagging indicators. An unacceptable answer to me when I'm talking to my team and I'm asking them how's performance, how are we doing? An unacceptable answer is I don't know. Like there should always be something that we are driving to. And if the answer is truly I don't know, then pause the campaign. Because at the end of the day, we're not here to just burn money. We're here to make investments and see returns on investments. So depending on what your goal is, depending on your stage of focus, you're going to have a different set of leading and lag indicators depending on what that funnel looks like. So just to kind of show you guys in visual form, if it's lead gen, it might look like impression, click, lead, SQL, SQO, close won revenue. If we're talking awareness, it might look like impression, view, click, engage, visit, lead, SQL, SQO, close won revenue. And then it's really easy to understand where's the drop off, right? And one thing I will mention that's technically important is this is using a combination of both online and offline conversion events. So depending on where the activity happens, where the event happened, you're going to pull from a different data source. So for example, everything that you see here up until engage visit happens within the client browser. So this can all be tracked through Google Tag Manager and just standard tracking with conversion tracking. But once you get into lead, SQL, SQO, close won revenue, this is where now the conversion funnel shifts to using server-side tracking. So you want to use both. It's not a one or the other. Ideally, it's both. And in most cases with most SaaS companies, they don't get the amount of event activity required to satisfy the needs of ad algorithms. Like for folks that are running ads on Meta recommends at least 50 events on a weekly basis per ad set to satisfy its algorithm. I don't know about you, but I don't know many SaaS brands that are getting 50 demos a week on their campaigns, especially if they're starting out. So this is where you need the combination of both these micro leading events and these lagging events to not only give you visibility and optics on where you need to improve, but also to satisfy these algorithms so that they know how to optimize for you.
So the offline events would be things like your lead moving through stages in your CRM, And what he's saying is make up for the lack of volume with activities feeding information back to these platforms so that they keep learning and know to send the right folks your way.
Exactly. And then what you can do, taking it a step further, getting really into the weeds here, is you can assign different values for each step. So then Google, Meta, LinkedIn knows an impression, or in this case, your first conversion would be an engaged visit. An engaged visit, maybe you assign like a value of a penny, but an SQL has a value of 1,000. So they know an engaged visit is dramatically less valuable than an SQL. And then if you're using, this is even more important on platforms like Google, where you're using value-based bidding, now they take that into consideration when they're setting their bids for you.
Got it. Makes sense. So, and I think what comes up next is also my favorite part because we borrowed this from Silvio. And as a founder, whenever I want to see how things are going, this is what helps Revenue Hero visualize its own metrics. So, take us to how you visualize all of this.
All right. So next step at getting your optics underway is you need to build a blended revenue dashboard. So blended means paid and organic. So you at the end of the day, marketing is one team. You know, we're just depending on how the team is split up, we're approaching different aspects of marketing. But at the end of the day, we all have collectively the same goal. We want a certain amount of, and you know, a sales-led example, demos, SQLs, ops. If you're product-led, we want a certain amount of free trial signups, onboarded signups, paid users. That should be the focus and the strategic goal of any marketing team, in my opinion. Otherwise, then people can kind of get into the attribution game of, you know, they're trying to prove their worth. But collectively as a team, that's what you guys are driving for. And as you start to scale your program, what you're going to find very fast is you're going to realize not every channel performs equally. And not every campaign within an existing channel based on its objective performs equally. And that's okay. Like, it's not a matter of having the best of everything. It's a matter of having a little bit of everything working well enough for you. So collectively, you have all this opportunity, this volume, and the blended efficiency makes sense for you based on your CAC and your lifetime value. So you need to build a blended revenue dashboard where you're able to see, and this is the example that I share in our Building a Paid Media Program course in Module 3, but basically you need to see within the time frame that you're inspecting, what was your direct performance. So I can see in this hypothetical scenario, Google has a cost per lead of $365. And this is my real cost per lead because these 176 leads wasn't from what I see in the Google Ads Manager, which is always wrong. It's from Salesforce, it's from HubSpot, it's from whatever your CRM is. So you're taking the difference between the two and you're getting your real cost. And then this makes it really easy in the case of, like, if you're a marketing manager listening to this, when your founder is asking you, hey, we spent whatever money on Google last month, how did it do? You can just come to one place and you can see really easily, okay, we spent $64,000 and we got back, you know, whatever the return was. Now, equally important is organic. You need to pull in organic, and I classify it as organic, but it could be like organic and direct, but basically the non-paid marketing sourced contribution. You need to also pull that in within the same time frame so you can see your blended performance. So for example, I have a blended cost per lead of $42. I have and this is fake data, so it doesn't make sense, but you know, $42 cost per lead. Imagine it was like a $500 cost per SQO, and so on and so forth. This is really important because if you're doing these other stages outside of capture, specifically create, 80% of that will not convert directly. And the way you're going to measure success in that stage in terms of a lagging indicator is the overall blended, whatever that thing is, trials, demos, opportunities. And then you're going to measure the blended efficiency, the blended pipe to spend month over month, quarter over quarter, and so on and so forth. So this is where it very much becomes this team sport, and it's less about, you know, what I can get in Google directly versus LinkedIn and so on and so forth, because as your program scales, the lines between channels get a lot blurrier.
Yeah, this dashboard is one of my favorite, and I'm sure this question is running in a lot of people's heads. How do you build this dashboard? I'm sure that's a session or a masterclass in itself. If there's a link that I should point people to, or just a set of tools that you recommend, what would that be?
Yeah. I'm trying not too hard to like self-promote, but like in module 3 of our course, I literally show you how to build this dashboard from scratch. But
Awesome.
the short answer is it depends on your CRM. The integration might look a little different. So like if you're using Salesforce, you can use this is a Google Sheet dashboard, so you can use Salesforce connector add-on to import your Salesforce data into the dashboard. If you're using HubSpot, you can import the data through a HubSpot workflow. And then as far as all the spend data goes, you can use a data connector like Data Slayer or Supermetrics to be able to import that data on a schedule.
All right, sounds great. Towards the end of the session, we'll be sure to pop a link to the course and list down all the tools that you just mentioned. Great. I think
all right.
Time check. Yeah, we can move on to what comes next.
All right, keep me honest because I can rant on each one of these points for an hour. Okay, moving on in terms of optics and making sure you have that executional clarity that we're trying to build towards is you need to get in the habit of documenting your experiments. So anything you do is an experiment. There's an assumption. I'm going to launch this campaign because I believe this will happen. That's an experiment. That's an assumption that you want to test. You need to get in the habit of documenting these things so that way you can build a library of learnings. This is one of those things where it seems slow in the moment to force yourself to document something and to think in this way. But fast forward a month, 2 months, 3 months, you're going to have this repository of knowledge that you have built up that's going to be so helpful because maybe, for example, you tested Facebook Messenger ads and you didn't see good results. But fast forward 4 months, your founder read an article on Facebook Messenger ads. I know I'm guilty of this. And you send it to your marketing team and you're like, hey, we should test Facebook Messenger ads. And then you can say, oh, wait a second, we tried it. And this is how we set up our experiment. This was our hypothesis. This was our time frame. This was our results. And it didn't work out for us, right? Or where this is also super helpful is when you're on calls with ad reps. I can't tell you the amount of battles that I've gotten with Google ad reps on the call. And this is no shame on ad reps, and they're great people, but like they don't also usually have all the context. And one of the ad reps was basically like pushing us to try a broader match type. And we ran the test and I had the write-up and I shared screen on the call and I said, hey, we ran this test. This was our time frame. This was our results. This was our control. This was what happened. This is why we're not running that. They could not dispute it, right? So like this just elevates you to a whole other level, and it really allows you to like do what you're doing in a methodical way. So this is a screenshot of our template that we use in the agency. So feel free to just take a screenshot of that. This is exactly what it looks like when we document experiments for our clients. Experiment name, the problem. Oftentimes too, you're testing things with like no real reason behind it, and you're just kind of wasting time. So I always tell my team, sometimes like part of our process is they'll write up experiment ideas for clients and then I'll review it. And I'll be like, why are we even testing this in the first place? I always like to like adopt the frame when I approach anything in marketing. I got this from John Carlton. He's like, imagine you had a gun to your head and you had to make this thing work and every second counted. Would you run this experiment? And when you operate from that frame, you realize a lot of the things you're doing actually aren't meaningful or worth the time. So it's a good frame to adopt in terms of thinking about what are the things that you're willing to bet on and write up, which takes it to another level. And then even more importantly, if you're a revenue leader listening to this, then have your team report on this stuff. And it's really great content to share on a quarterly all hands or something like this. But documenting your experiment learnings is super important, and it will help you move faster in the long run.
That's actually great. So don't just have an ad library, but also have a learnings library along with each one of your experiments that you can go through, because you might be working with one agency today, hiring them in-house. You don't want to repeat the same mistakes.
That's another great point. Yeah, absolutely. The knowledge sharing is super powerful, especially when there's multiple people involved. It's really powerful as well.
Awesome.
All right. Next up, you need to install all the necessary tracking. We kind of alluded to this, but I just wanted to list it out for you. You need to make sure you have your tracking pixels installed. This is like step 0. You need to make sure that you're using both online and offline conversion tracking. So the things that you can track via the pixel, and then the things that you can track via server side. This next point is very important, and most brands that I work with, they do not have this set up, and it's actually really easy to do, is you need to make sure you have some sort of mechanism on your website to track persist browser cookies. So I'll simplify that. When someone clicks your ad, you usually have a UTM associated with that click. If they go to your web page, the UTMs are present in the URL. The moment they go to another page outside of the landing page, the UTMs are gone. If they now revert back to your original page and fill out the form, your channel does not get the credit. The way you solve that is by setting up a persist browser cookie to store the UTMs across sessions. So that way you're able to direct the attribution back to the channel that drove the click. And on that note, you need to set up your hidden fields properly to capture those UTMs and the click IDs so you can set up offline conversions in the future. Technical stuff, but like this should not be seen as a chore. This is like money making activities. Like this will just give you so many dividends later down the line.
Yeah, I think might be technical, but this feels like hygiene, right? These are just the things that you can't go wrong with, and then wonder, hey, why am I not able to find out which ads are working and which ones aren't?
100%. And when you're building your paid infrastructure, the reason I outlined this presentation the way I did was to give you a 1, 2, 3. Don't move on to 4 until you've done 3, because if you do, what happens is you end up like a lot of the clients that we've worked with, where they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and they don't have a blended revenue dashboard. And it takes them 6 Salesforce reports and I don't know how many ad channel reports to answer basic questions. The person in their account is operating blindly, and they're making decisions on if they pause an ad or increase a budget based on what they're able to track on Google or whatever the channel is. And Google's reporting 15 conversions, but when you look in your CRM, you only have 3. It's such a flawed disconnect that you have to set this stuff up so that way you're set up for success later. And as you start to expand your program, you don't always feel like you have this chain hanging around the end of your leg, you know, kind of dragging you backwards. So it's really important to set stuff up.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
Okay, level 3, the final level, tactics. So when it comes to tactics, you know, everyone likes to fast forward to tactics, but there's a reason this is the third. These are some tactics in terms of the operations to make sure you have a really solid program. You want to get in the habit of sending weekly performance updates in relation to the goal that we started off with in the very first beginning of this presentation. So this is a really simple template that you can use, that we use. Hey, name, here's a quick update on how we're performing this week. Date range, we're blank % to our goal, projected to total on this current rate. Here's the things we should start doing. Here's the things we should stop doing. Here's what we should continue. This is just like a weekly pulse. Making decisions on like, do I pause an ad? Do I increase budget? On a week-by-week basis is very misleading because it's very easy to, it's very common to have these like peaks and valleys in terms of performance on a week-by-week basis. But at the very minimum, this is like a pulse check. It's just like, hey, you should freak out. Hey, you should not freak out. Here's what we're saying, right? Like, and it shouldn't take a lot of time. Like, it's just a quick, simple update. And it's a really great thing to establish trust with your leaders, with your clients, if you're listening to this and you're on the agency side, to show them that you're on top of things. So what this looks like in practice, hey, John, here's a quick update on how we're performing this week. We're 45% to our 100 meetings book goal, projected to achieve 60 on our current rate. In terms of starting, we just launched a new remarketing campaign on LinkedIn to drive more demos. We're going to stop our video testimonial campaigns that spent over $1,000 that haven't driven any demos, so we paused them. And we're going to continue to invest in non-brand paid search campaigns because they're driving demos at $500. So very simple, but very important in terms of operational prowess.
Yeah, I think maybe we should pause here for screenshots of folks who want to use this template.
Yeah, go for it.
Great.
Okay, next up. Did you have something, Chada?
Oh, no, go on. I just also took made sure that my own team takes a screenshot of that before we move on.
Screenshots, go.
All right,
All right,
great.
we're good. Next up is optimization task list to stay focused in each channel. This will vary by the channel, so that's why I didn't put any one specific example versus like the things you do on a regular basis for Google is different than LinkedIn, different than Meta, different than Reddit, different than Quora, different than Twitter. They're all like their own countries with their own customs and their own ways of doing. But the point here that I want to communicate is that you have some sort of task list to stay focused when you are doing the day-to-day work. So ideally you have this task list broken out by daily activities, weekly and monthly and quarterly. So it's very clear, because for those of you watching this that manage ads, you understand how easy it is to just log into your Google Ad Manager. Maybe you log in your Google Ad Manager, it's like 9 in the morning, and then you see something, you kind of go off the rabbit hole, you look back up and it's 45 minutes later, it's 9:45, and you actually haven't accomplished anything meaningful. When I was back in my early days of running ads, one of the things that I did was I used to do a lot of white label work. So white label work is basically an agency would get the client contract and then they would outsource the work to a hidden provider, and then they would pass the work off as their own. And I used to do this, and I used to manage the Google Ad accounts for like a whole bunch of different agencies, and their internal reps could barely manage 10, 15 accounts, and I was managing 50 accounts at a time easily because I had an optimization task list. So this is where I kind of just came on this idea and realized the impactfulness of it. But once you can kind of list out those tasks, it just makes things so much easier, because now I know, okay, it's Google Ads, it's daily. I got to check pacing. I got to check my search terms report. I got to add negative keywords. It just makes things so much easier, so you don't get lost in the ad manager maze and then waste time.
Got it. And especially with ad products choosing to change their layout willy-nilly, you definitely don't want to get lost in that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a whole other conversation. Yeah, 100%. All right, next up, tactical. Custom columns to remove distractions. So this is all around the note of like making you more productive in the ad managers. So depending on the platform, this may or may not be available. LinkedIn, I'm glad you're making tremendous strides, but you're still behind the ball. You don't have this, but Meta has this, LinkedIn has, or Google has this, Microsoft has this. Where you have it available, you want to use it, and you want to create custom columns to remove irrelevant metrics and to see the metrics that matter. So if you're doing what I mentioned and you're using offline conversions, you can report on these things. So for example, this is a screenshot where we can see sales qualified lead, we can see the cost for SQL, we can see how many content downloads we got. It makes it really easy for me to now optimize and make decisions versus if I didn't customize my columns and I just see like total conversions. That's very misleading, because I might have 50 total conversions, but when you break it down, I only have 3 SQLs. And this ties back to what are those funnel points for you? And then ideally you create custom columns to reflect that funnel in your ad manager, so you can then make the necessary decisions off of it. Okay, let's fly. Moving on to the next one here, documented change logs. So this is one of those really easy things to do, easy not to do, but where this is going to be your best friend. A documented change log is just a document. It could be a Google Doc, it can be a ClickUp doc, it can be literally a piece of paper on a notebook, but it's a document where you write down this month, this year, these were the changes that I made, the significant changes that I made that I might want to remember one day, because it might come back to bite me in the butt. So where this becomes really helpful is, maybe you're running Google ad campaigns, and for the past month, 2 months, 3 months, your performance has been on like a steady decline. And for whatever reason, maybe you didn't catch it soon enough. You haven't done a good job. You don't have like the hygiene, the optics that we talked about, and you didn't catch it sooner. 3 months in, you're like, oh my God, we're not getting as many demos as we used to from Google. What's going on? If you have a change log, it's great, because then you can just look at what were the significant changes you made 3 months ago, and then see, was there anything that you might have done that actually negatively impacted performance? Now, certain platforms also have change logs in the tool. So like Google Ads has a change history log that you can look at. But this is also helpful because you can add your anecdotal thoughts around the changes you made and why you changed it versus just the activity. And not all platforms support that change log yet. So it's a good best practice to have this if you don't.
Yeah, I think, and the change logs also become your source for those weekly emails out to leadership, out to who you're reporting this on. So you don't have to like write them and then send an email out and then have your weekly learning separately. This is kind of your repository to refer to.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all the work that like there's so much work that goes into managing ads if you're doing it well and right that no one cares about and no one sees. Like ads specifically, you get results really quickly, or I should say, you get feedback really quickly. And if you have a good ad, like performance marketing manager internally, whoever it is, like, and they're being a good steward of your account, these are a lot of the things that they're doing on a day by day, week by week basis that no one ever sees. So like, give them a pat on the back if you've got someone managing your account, because it is a full-time role and they're doing a lot, especially if they're doing their due diligence and like actually executing all these things we're talking about.
Yeah,
So moving on.
performance. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so performance marketing gets noticed and gets all the attention only when the leads stop coming, and the leads keep coming.
Exactly.
Then you don't notice what's going on.
It's like SEO. There's a understanding it takes time, and like with SEO specifically, you see the work. You're like, okay, they're getting keywords research, they're briefing content, they're whatever it is. But with paid, there's so much unseen work, and like I hope if you're a manager watching this and you have somebody running your ads internally, you see this and then you look at them and you say thank you. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Clear optimization rules for your leading and lagging indicators. So this all connects. Nothing is in silo. Going back to this here, you're clear on the activities that you should be doing. You're clear on your steps within your funnel. Now, fast forward here, you can create rules on how you approach making changes based on the things that you have mapped out, your leading and your lagging indicators. There are 4 buckets of rules that we have internally classified. I'm going to really just focus on the first 2 because I think that's where you guys will get the most value, but I'll talk about all 4. You have non-performer rules, ongoing maintenance rules, budget pacing rules, and critical alerts. A lot of this you can automate as well. It's not always easy to do, but it is possible depending on the platform. And I can talk about how we've automated it, but non-performer rules are rules that this is how you approach pausing ads or campaigns or campaign groups or ad sets, keywords, depending on the platform we're talking about. How do you go about approaching pausing that thing? What set of criteria, what set of events must occur in order for you to make the decision of, I am going to turn this thing off? That's your non-performer rule. The condition of this rule is typically based on the lifetime of that entity. So the lifetime of the ad. So for an example, maybe I want to drive, in my case with ad conversion, maybe I want to get new signups for $100. If my ad spends 2 to 3x my goal, I'm going to turn it off. So if it spends $200 and didn't drive a single sign up, it gets turned off. That's your non-performer rule. And it's super important. If you took nothing and you just implemented the non-performer, I can almost guarantee you'll have better performance from your existing ads. We let ads run way too long. Like one of my friends, 𝗢𝗣𝗢𝗥, he has a great phrase and he says, you have to kill your darlings. And we hold on to our darlings for too long. And sometimes you just got to say goodbye. Like I gave you a shot, you didn't work. It's time to move on. And when you start to adopt this methodology and this approach of like, notice how pragmatic this is, right? Like now, if you ask me and you're like, hey, this ad is turned off, why? I'm not like, oh, because I just wanted to. I'm like, no, it's off because it spent 2 times our allowable cost. Whoa, credibility, right? Like now this is where, in my opinion too, which is part of the things I loved when I was doing at metadata, is where I think machines are better than humans. Like when it comes to this pragmaticness of like how we approach decisions on pausing and increasing and decreasing, this is actually where I think machines are better. And we as humans need to adopt kind of a more, technical perspective, because there should be no emotion involved. It's spent, it didn't work, it dies. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like you can have non-performer rules for awareness ads. If you're optimizing based on like video completions, if the cost per video completion is 2 to 3x your allowable target, it gets killed. Now, is this statistically significant? No, but it's a simple framework for you to allow decisions to be made in. And most of us try to aim for statistical significance, but we don't even have the budget or the sample size to warrant that. So it's just a simple way for you to actually approach this process. Okay, we have 3 others, and I know we're way over time, I think. So I'm gonna fly. Ongoing maintenance rules. So your ongoing maintenance rules are the rules that you implement to take care of the ads, whatever the entity is, on an ongoing basis. So the things that once performed, but now they're no longer performing. Um, so for example, maybe my allowable cost per lead is 1.5x. So like maybe my ad was driving leads for $150, but then for whatever reason over the past 90 days it creeped up. It's not performing anymore, and now my average cost per lead creeped up to like 270. It's going to get shut off. It's no longer performing. It has time. I'm grateful for the performance it gave me. It's now time to introduce the next set of ads. Once you start to operate from this frame, the first thing you're going to realize is like how many more designs you need, how many more creatives you need, because you're going to fly through your ads so much faster. And now you're really going to understand why you have to have a really strong creative motion, and like why people on the B2C side are testing, hundreds of variations on a weekly basis per ad set, depending on what their focus is. The same is true in B2B, but we just linger for too long, and we make the justification of a long sales cycle that we're not going to make decisions in the short term. So I'm ranting, but these are 2 essential rules for you guys to implement. And then just to quickly talk on the last 2, budget pacing. How are you making your decisions on pacing? At the very minimum here, it should be like, okay, I'm willing to spend X amount of dollars per month on this channel. Once you get to 90% of that threshold, your campaign should get paused so you don't overspend. And then the last one is critical alerts. You can set up rules and automation around critical alerts. So for example, like one of the ones that I love to do is for ad fatigue. So if your frequency is greater than 7 and your CTR is less than 0.5%, send an alert. Ad fatigue has been beholden on you or something like this. So the combination of these different optimization rules of your leading and lagging indicators will take your process, your results to the next level in terms of that executional prowess and clarity that you need to really scale a strong program.
Got it. So I know you flew through a lot of slides, so maybe need a break for water or something. But I know we covered a lot. For me as a founder who runs marketing at Revenue Hero, first off, I need to go pat my marketer on the back saying, "Hey, I just learned about all the things that you do, right?" But folks in the audience, I know that there's a lot of information. This is the time for questions. So if you have any questions, pop them either in the chat box or in the Q&A section. And Silvio, once he gets a chance to catch his breath and drink some water, we'll address all of those questions. And we still have a couple of minutes left for questions.
Yeah, and just while people are dropping questions, some of the platforms allow you to use automated rules, so you can streamline some of these conditions automatically. Unfortunately, most don't, because I don't know, they just haven't introduced that feature. We built our own platform internally to do this for us before we were like, I mean, you can get creative with like Google Sheets and Zapier and data connectors and kind of like, mix and create this duct tape to be able to send a lot of like these automations and these alerts. But we see the value in it so much that we actually custom built our own platform that does this now for us pragmatically. But if you don't have the ability to build your own platform or duct tape it together, then at the very minimum, just having it written down. So when you go and approach your day as the performance marketer, you're referencing these things and how you make your decisions.
Makes perfect sense. All right, Silvio, I think you've created a lot of fans in this session, because the only question that came up is somebody wanting to come work with you. So the question is whether you're hiring. So that leads me to ask, where can people find you? Where can folks find your courses and all the things that we spoke about? What are the resources that people should look for?
Yeah. So if you want to get connected with me, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Silvio Perez. If you want to get connected with @Conversion and become an @Conversion student, just go to @conversion.com. Takes less than 90 seconds to sign up. I timed it, and you'll get access to all of our existing courses and future courses for free. Right now, at the time of this recording, we have our course on building a paid media program and B2B advertising foundations live. We've got Google Ads 101, 102, and 103 coming up soon. We've got LinkedIn ads as well on the horizon and Reddit ads. And all of that is set to be launched in 2024. So definitely stay tuned and sign up if you're not already. And we don't charge for our courses. So like I mentioned, they're all free. Like one of our missions to students, we have 5 commitments, but one of them is on-demand courses will always be free. And then if you want to take it a step further and you want to get more plugged into the ad world and connect with us, we're launching our first community, which is a paid community for like B2B SaaS advertisers. That's launching in September, and you can just DM me on LinkedIn if you're interested in that.
Sounds great. I think we have a couple of last minute questions. I'll just quickly put it on stage. Have you seen success in Meta as Meta's becoming a solid channel, especially in B2B? I've always used Meta for retargeting, never got encouraging results with the cold layer.
Yeah, Meta is very powerful. The good thing too about Meta is that creatively, you can reuse a lot of the assets you created on LinkedIn for Meta, and you can repurpose those same assets. So it just allows you to get more distribution reach from the effort that you've already created. The challenge with Meta for most brands is they don't have enough conversion events set up to satisfy Meta's algorithm. But Meta's algorithm, the way Meta works today, there's 2 ways you can approach it. You can either go the hyper-targeted route where you're using a third-party data source like 𝗢𝗣𝗘𝗥𝗔𝗧 or metadata or even just your own CRM, and you're creating like a sync from HubSpot into Meta to build lists. That's the one way you can go. The other way you can do it, which most brands don't, is you go broad, but you have really good conversion events and you have enough of them so that now you can train Meta's algorithm to find the people that you want using their AI and machine learning. So it's 2 different approaches. You have to test with both, but if you do the AI version, the machine learning version, you have the right conversion event set up. But yeah, it's an exceptional channel. Meta ads, a lot of it people fail just because of the executional approach. Like for example, they launch their ads, but they don't realize that they're using optimized features of Meta ads that you have to be mindful of. Where Meta will now like split and add variants to your ads, and you don't realize it. If you're using automatic placements, now your video is showing up in like the feed. That's like a terrible placement. So you're not optimizing for right placements. When you're using Meta ads, you're targeting people that are not connected to Wi-Fi. You're targeting them when they're on their LTE and they're out and about. So there's all these like little nuances of Meta ads that people just get wrong. They're not respecting the placement. They have a image ad that's showing up in a story that's not formatted for stories. So it's a lot of times it's not that the channel itself doesn't work. Like if your audience is on Facebook and Instagram, then it can work. It's just a matter of, are you going to make it work? Are you willing to invest the money, the time, the resources to go through the learning process of figuring out what is the winning set of combinations of variables of audience, ad, offer, placement to see the success that you want?
All right. So last question, and then I'll let you go. Any suggestions on creative testing for LinkedIn ads?
Any
Probably a
suggestions for
course in
creative
itself,
testing?
but yeah.
Yeah, I'll totally give you like one really simple tip. In terms of creative testing for LinkedIn ads and also paid social, like I think the same way for Meta, I like to follow the 3 C's. So concept, copy, color, if applicable. So typically when most SaaS brands approach creative testing on LinkedIn and really like any of those other ones as well, is they start with copy. And traditionally for SaaS brands, when you're testing copy, you usually have short form copy, which by the way, I highly recommend testing long form copy as well. But traditionally it's like 1 to 2 sentences, short form copy, and then they have the same creative, and then they just have different variations with different copy. That usually doesn't drive as big of a direct impact in the short term versus if you just tried a completely different creative concept. So when you're first starting out, I always recommend really getting clear on what are the creative concepts, what are the design styles. Like you really want to put effort in making each ad unique, and like the goal is to break some serious patterns here, right? You're going against zombie mode. And zombie mode is when people are just scrolling through social media and they're not, they're not at their highest self, right? I know I'm not when I'm just going through social media. So you need to break patterns, and like a 2 lines variation of copy isn't really going to do it. So really focus in on the creative concept first, like memes versus product mockups versus before and afters versus illustrations versus AI generated creative. Like you can go down the rabbit hole on all the variations you can do creatively. Um, and that'll get you a better lift in the short term, and then from there you just go down the rabbit hole further.
Sounds great. Silvio, it's a great presentation and conversation when more than 90% of the folks hang back 5 minutes after end of time of the session. So thanks a lot for that. Thank you everybody for tuning in. You also want to watch out for tomorrow's session with Meg from 𝗢𝗡𝗥𝗦. We have a lot of great learnings to look forward to there about PLG. Silvio, it was a really great conversation. A lot of takeaways, both for me and for everybody in the audience, I'm sure. And that's it for this session of Masters of Revenue Demand Generation. Silvio, I'll see you in the backstage.